Most people walk into a conflict like it's a battlefield. They're tense, reactive, and really they're unsure what they're even fighting for. But what if I told you? What if I told you that you don't have to, every conflict doesn't have to be a war. But what if I told you that you could prepare with your heart and your mind so that, well, that tension becomes a turning point and not a breakdown? Hello, welcome to the Full Weight of Joy podcast. I am so excited for you to be here today. I have a great episode for you. This is one that I walked into a team, and I have been to teams that have done really well, that you can just tell that these teams gel. And then I've worked with teams who you walk in and you realize, and teams, friend groups, like that there is conflict amiss. There is a conflict in the air, and you know that everything is so emotionally triggered that you just don't want to be part of it. And so this came out of that one team that I was talking about, the latter one, the one that I walked in and I was like, actually came out from both because I was like, what's the difference between the two teams? What are the things? And I am a full believer that you prepare beforehand. Maybe it's the military in me, maybe it's the therapist in me, maybe it's a coach in me, maybe it's a mindset coach, whatever. I think it's probably a little bit of everything, but I've always believed in you prepare and you learn and you practice before the event. With the military, you have to. And I was thinking about this, like how many times do we need to prepare before we go into something? Before we take a test, we study for the test. Before we go to the doctor, we prepare for the doctor. Whatever it is, I have a really great example of this, is my daughter this year. This is her final year of the Knights of Heroes camp. She's graduating. The camp itself is closing, so I know that some people are like, what is this camp? But this camp is a mentorship camp that's specifically for the kids who've lost a loved one, lost a mom or dad in the line of duty. And so this camp is about mentorship and pushing past what you believe you're capable of. And she's been going, oh my goodness, since I think she was 11. So she's 15 now, so 4 years. My son graduated last year from it, and he went since he was, I think 11 is when, no, my daughter's been going since she was 10, but it's 11 typically is when they start. And so here it is. They have every year they work, they practice, they train. And then this year, their graduation year, she's not a senior, she's a sophomore, or she'll be going into sophomore year. She is going to climb Pikes Peak. Her and her team, that is what they're going to do, is they're going to hike this 14er. I think that's what it is, 14er. Anyway, you know what Pikes Peak is. You know it's tall. You know it's treacherous. You know that it's not something that you're like, it's a Tuesday. I think I'll climb Pikes Peak today, especially if you live on sea level, like us here in Oklahoma. So going up to Colorado, the mountains of Colorado, that already puts us at a little disadvantage, puts us at an edge. And one of the things, though, that they talked about is how to prepare for this. And every year they do a little bit stronger hike. The first couple of years, they actually stay at camp and learn survival skills. And so they have this program where every year you learn it a little bit more. And it had me thinking, because the years that she takes it seriously and even does some like work to prepare, like she'll do some cardio, she'll do some strength training, things like that. Those years are always easier for her than the years she doesn't. So this conflict management is similar to climbing Pikes Peak, taking a hike because you can't just do it once and figure out that every mountain will be the same. Because we have a Turkey Mountain, which really I call Turkey Hill. And everyone's like, what's that? I'm like, oh, Turkey Mountain. They're like, okay. Because I've lived in Idaho. I've been to the Rockies. I've been to these Swiss Alps, these amazing, huge mountains. And Turkey Hill is not a mountain that I would not consider it a mountain. It is a hill. And yet, the perspective, but the way you train for Turkey Mountain is not the way you train for Pikes Peak. You can't train for Turkey Mountain and expect that Pikes Peak would be easy, right? You can tell that there's going to be a difference. When you deal with conflict, when you deal with people in general, you can't go into it blind and expect magical results. Expect it to be easy. Expect it to be something that is a breeze that you come out unscathed. Like you have to. So I was thinking about this and I was like, what can I do to create a podcast about this? Because it's such a good lesson. Because if we prepare for, and I don't even like the word conflict in this because it's like preparing for battle. No, we're preparing for, because we have disagreements. Let's face it, every human, I have disagreements with my kids daily, minutely, whatever. I have disagreements with my clients. We work through them because we're human, because we don't see everything eye to eye. And sometimes they are right and I don't have all the information. Sometimes I am right and they don't have all the information. Sometimes we're both wrong and we both learn something in it. But actually every conflict is a way you can learn something about yourself and others and about the world. So I was thinking about this. What are 3 things that we need, that we can use to preemptively work with through conflict? That we can start to train our hearts and our minds and our souls and our understanding. And so really it came down to 3 things that were different between the team that works well together and the team that doesn't, the conflict-ridden team. And even, don't hear what I'm not saying here, that team that does work well together, one of the things that I am doing for them is they want to overcome conflict management. So even if you're working well together, you can always do better at it. And this team that I've been working with for a little while, it wasn't the core of what they hired me for. And yet when we started working on this, the conflict management like bubbled to the top. And then now we're able to have conversations. And so I'll go through like really quickly, and then we'll talk about each one. The first one is humility. Second one is triggers. The third one is outcome. Okay, so humility, triggers, outcome. Those 3 things, and you have an understanding before you even walk into the room or come to an idea, a conflict possibility, those right there are game changers. They will change things even before you start or you finish. And so let's break them down, because the biggest things that are different between the team that does work well together and the team that didn't is the humility in the room. It's knowing you aren't perfect. Okay, we can say it, but then understanding it and living it is different. Realizing that perfection is not our goal. We don't have all the answers. You don't know what you don't know. You don't have all the information. They don't have all the information. Nobody in the room is 100% on board, on the same playing field. Everyone comes from different perspectives, different understanding, different motivations. This is why I use the Enneagram, so we can understand, we can walk in. But back to humility is understanding, and it's the people who've done the work, the people who understand this, that they're not perfect, that they don't have all the information, that they don't have the same perspective as the person in front of them. Even if they've known each other forever, they still have a different perspective. So the humility to know that there's things for you to learn, for you to understand, for you to walk in and be humble in the resolution, humble in what is coming, what's ready, because we don't know if the person is coming who maybe they were cut off on the way to work and they were frustrated. Maybe they had a diagnosis, or a friend or family had a diagnosis that shook them. Maybe they had news, or maybe they just woke up and maybe they didn't get sleep and so they're tired. So the thing is, we can't know exactly what someone else is walking through. We don't know what we're getting when we're dealing with other people. But the thing is, if we know ourselves, then that's half the battle. We can't know them, but we can spend time understanding ourselves. And it leads into the second one, is know your triggers. Know what your triggers are. Know that your triggers are not the same things as other people's triggers. By understanding this, where that reaction comes from, where the tension lies, you know what you don't know. Or if you have a bent that, like, I have it when I try really hard as an Enneagram 1, when I realized this, like, my whole world started to make sense. This is one reason why I love the Enneagram, is understanding that it's not that I want to be right to prove others wrong. I want to be right because I want to improve. I want to make something better. And if I don't have the right information, how am I going to do that? When I understand that when I'm walking into a conflict, I see what's right versus what's wrong or not so right, or what is better and what's not as good. Like, I see it in that, how can we improve this? Whereas when my daughter walks into a conflict as an Enneagram 4, she sees things as, how is it unique? How is it special? How is it different? How can it be experienced? So we come at things very different because an experience and then what's right are just two different perspectives. And so understanding that when someone says something that makes me feel like I didn't have it right, or that I could have that I could have known something different, it triggers me. Now, knowing that trigger, it's not as strong anymore. I recognize it, I acknowledge it, and I say, okay, do I need to act on it or not? No, okay, let's go. Then this is an opportunity to learn. But by knowing my triggers, now I have taken that emotional charge away from it. When I start to feel the triggers, because they're going to come, also know that when you're in a reactive state and the person in front of you or people in front of you are in reactive states, unknowingly, they're going to hit at the triggers that have worked before. So this is why it's so important to know your triggers. If you can know the other people's triggers, great, that's helpful. But a lot of times you don't have time before the conflict. Okay, here's a survey. Please take it out so we can manage this conflict in a more effective way. No, we do it through conversation, and you're able to say, "Hey, listen, this hurts," or this is something that I need you to not say, or when they do say it, even if you don't have that relationship where you can tell them like, "Hey, that's a boundary. Don't cross that line." You can understand yourself to know, okay, when this happens, I don't need to react to it. I get to respond in the way that you, again, preemptively decide to respond. So you can see how just having humility and realizing that you don't have all the info and that you don't know what is happening in your heart of hearts, that you know yourself. And then knowing your triggers, because in the heart of conflict is reaction, is tension. It's that battlefield that you don't even know you're preparing for a battle that you don't know what's going to happen. But if you know the elements that you have, like the climbing the mountain, you need to know the tools that you have in your backpack that you can pull out, that you've preemptively, that you've trained and you've put in there intentionally, because these are things that you can use. When you know your triggers, when you have humility and compassion, then those are tools you get to use that now you're ready for this mountain you're climbing. And the third one that is, I feel like this one we forget because we're amped up. We're so focused on the emotion of the conflict we're about to have. And how many times have you replayed, or you in your mind, maybe it's just me, played out, I'm going to say this and they're going to say this, or this is what they're going to come at me with. And you rehearse this plan that doesn't happen. My late husband used to tell me, you can't get mad at me for conversations I never had with you. Because I learned that when ones are in stress, we go to four. And so this whole this fantasy life. And so I would have full conversations in my head and I'm like, you just were rude. And I didn't say anything. And because I'm like, but I know that's how you would have. And I truly believe most of the time that's how he would have responded. But the thing is, I didn't give him the opportunity. And so this is why we step in, we understand ourselves, the self-mastery. But in this next element, this is case by case. This one is conflict by conflict. This is understanding what is at stake. This is, what outcome do you need? Is it power or people? And power, I don't mean overbearing. I don't mean in this respect. I just power in people because it's both P's. But it's really is it relationship or results? Maybe that's better than power in people. Relationship, is it matter? Do we have to have a certain result? There are some times that a conflict it's a result we need to come to. Sometimes life or death, sometimes these crucial turning points for a project, and a result is what you need. So you know that the result is the outcome that's desired. But sometimes it's the people. Sometimes the conflict it was a misunderstanding and you've got to come to that agreement. But by knowing, do I want to be right or do I want to be kind? And there are times that thinking of my military days, there were times that my flight and we disagreed. I had information that they didn't have, that they didn't know, that they couldn't know. But what I needed them to know is to trust me. And so we got to that point with that conflict. Instead of having conflict about it, I'm like, listen, the result is the important thing in this conversation. This is the result that's needed. We need to figure out how to get it. Whatever we need to do. But 9 times out of 10, it's really if you work on the relationship and understanding, the result is better as well. But by knowing this in advance of, okay, this result is the ultimate goal here. And by looking at that, it's like, how can we bring the relationship to that result? And if the relationship is, how can we bring the result to the relationship? What can we do to compromise? What can we do? But how can we understand how our triggers and our humility play into this outcome that we need? So these three things that we have, if we know these in advance, if we start working in humility, again, it's like climbing that mountain. You've got to keep working on that. This is why with my clients, the self-mastery is so important, because once we master something about us, we understand our core values, we get to level up and go deeper with them. Once we master our self-awareness, we get to level up and we get to go deeper with them. And as seasons change, so do things that we learn about ourselves. But then also those triggers come, and most of those triggers are ingrained from childhood. Most of those triggers are actually, they don't shift and change to a different trigger. It just may look, it's a different package. It's a different idea, but the same concept. So it just may be written differently to throw off your brain. But once you know your triggers, you get to change, you get to acknowledge, you get to decide, you get to respond instead of react. And so the next one, that the knowing the outcome, and why that's so important is because sometimes the result is not even important. Maybe the result was already decided and we need to work through a conversation that we had. Or maybe the relationship is really not that important. You're not going to ever see them again. You just need the result for the event, whatever it may be. Now, we get to choose our words. We get to choose our experiences here. We get to choose, we get to walk in humbleness. We get to walk knowing our triggers, and then we get to decide the outcome and realize that some things, we get to set some things aside. We don't have to pull everything out in every conflict, because sometimes it doesn't matter. So even when I'm having a conversation with someone about an outcome, about a result that we need, a lot of times it's okay. I know we don't see eye to eye on this. I know we differ, but how can we work together through humility and understand our triggers in order to get the result that we're looking for? And it works so much easier. So conflict isn't the enemy. It's unexamined identity is. You can't control the conflict, but you can control who you are when you walk into it. Do you want to be proud of how you handle a situation? When you understand yourself, that's what happens. When you understand who you are, when you have a sense of your identity, what your triggers are, what your core values are, what your core motivations and core avoidances are, that identity comes through, and now you know what sword you can fall on and what one you're going to take that hill with, how you want to show up, how you want to be remembered. So it's simple. It's really not that hard, but it is important, and it is the deep work. It is slowing down to actually do these three things, to understand and identify and acknowledge these three things. You can't just do it once and set it and forget it. There's nothing with self-awareness that is set it and forget it. There's nothing with your core values. There's nothing with it's so ingrained in, it's such a journey, so ingrained in who we're becoming, that we get to live this. We don't have to, it's a process and a journey. It's not a one and done. And it's something that we can take little bites, little steps every day and get better and better. So friend, if you are ready to step in these three things, to walk in the humility that is you, to know your triggers and understand why you do what you do, that was a game changer for me. And it is a game changer for 95% of my clients. They think they know what triggers them. But when we start to get to the source versus the symptom, it usually changes how they see things, their whole perspective and understanding. And then they can go back to all of the decisions and things that happened in their past and realize why it happened like it is. And it's not a secret. It's not a secret. We're not as complicated as we think. When we start breaking down, we add this complication so that way we feel like it's overburdened, and because it takes calories, right? It takes our brain power. It takes asking ourselves these hard questions that give us insight to who we are and what we want. So if you're ready to go deeper, I have two options for you. One is go to my website and take the Purpose Map quiz. Like start to understand what your triggers are, what is holding you back. Let's start to acknowledge where you are, and then we can decide where you want to go. Then we can acknowledge that and we can write it down and we can get it out there. Or if you're ready and you're like, Tami, I know that these 3 things, among others, are things that I want to master. I want to master myself. I want to master humility, and I want to walk in and I want to be seen for who I am, not what I think I need to be. And you want to know your triggers, because once you acknowledge them and you know them, you get to change them. You get to live outside of them and realize that they are a thermometer they're an indicator to tell you what's going on. They're not a deciding factor for you. And then also to understand what result or relationship, like in each thing, when you understand what is needed, you can shift what works for you. You can shift what areas you need to lean into, and it makes life so much easier. So if you're ready for that, get on an elite purpose mapping call. With this call, you will meet with me. We will go through, I'm going to give you a survey to take beforehand. So that way I am prepared for this call, because you're going to walk away with next steps. Like this free call is not just one that it's not just a call that when you come in and I'm just going to sell you. No, this is a call that I want you to get a result. I want you to see what's possible. And the way to do that is by understanding what your purpose, what your core values, the self-mastery can look like for you. All right, friend. I am so grateful that you're here. I'm so thankful. And I'm thankful that you listen to this podcast week after week. I can't wait till I can go back to 2 podcasts a week, because I miss it. But I'm making some shifts. And this summer, this is my last summer with Isaac at home as a high schooler. And so as seasons change, we get to shift and change with it. And with that, it's okay. What can I do in order to live my values? And going down to 1 podcast a week again was one of the biggest things that I could do to give myself more time to work on the projects that I want to work on, to spend more time with my kids and be present with them. And you get to do that too. Again, you want to know how? Get on a call with me or take that quiz, TamiMurrayCoaching.com/quiz, and let's chat. All right. If you have not left me a rate or review, please consider doing that on Spotify or specifically Apple Podcasts, because that's how other people find it. That helps me understand like what's resonating, and it just warms my heart to know that you're listening. Sometimes we see numbers and it's like you forget that each number is a person. And so I try to picture each of you as I'm talking, as I'm coming up with ideas and things that matter to you. And so let me know what resonates. What do you want to hear more of? Because I love it. It makes it so much easier for me too, and I don't have to guess. So you get what you need and I get to give you what you need. So it works in tandem. I appreciate you so much. If you know someone who would benefit from listening to this, share it. Sharing is caring. All right, friend, choose joy until joy chooses you, and I will see you next week. Bye for now.